Hello, this is Ryan Ellis for the Southeast Michigan Tea Party, and I'm here joined with none other than Rick Ector. He is a man of many talents in one specific area, that being guns, and also teaching about gun ownership, proper gun handling. A quick bio for Mr. Ector. You can find Mr. Ector on Instagram and YouTube at Detroit CCW, and online at his website, legallyarmedindetroit.com. Rick Ector is a keynote speaker, expert witness, media host, firearm instructor in CCW and CPL classes, and you've also seen him on the Tucker Carlson Show. He's got a fascinating story. You have to see it for yourself. Again, Detroit CCW on Instagram and on YouTube. Welcome, Mr. Ector.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
We're in downtown Detroit at one of the Detroit Library locations here, sitting at the base of a statue. No, we're not about to topple it. We are actually admiring it. This is a statue of Abraham Lincoln. It's titled "Let Man Be Free." This is a copy of a statue that's found on the East Coast, I think in New Jersey or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Since we're at a spot that other statues are being critiqued, at least, if not much more than that,
pulled down and destroyed.
Can you speak to the concept of history? What needs to be remembered? What needs to be forgotten? What's appropriate in that? I know your expertise is, I've just introduced you as a gun expert, and now I'm throwing you into the deep water of
statues. A few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, I was a guest on a very popular news show here in Detroit on Fox 2.
Wow.
It was Let It Rip Weekend. And I was debating Coleman Young Jr.
What?
on this news show. And one of the topics that we were debating was the statues.
Wow.
And should we get rid of them or should we leave them? I took in the mind of Coleman Young Jr., I took a controversial position. I say that we leave the statues up. Why, Rick? Why? Why, if some people are now doing a reevaluation of their place in history, of the things they did and the things that they spoke of and the things they espoused, if we find them objectionable in today's standards, why, Rick? Why do you say leave them up? Because it serves as a training tool. It serves as history. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat them. If there's something you find objectionable about a statue that speaks to you about something negative or something objectionable that happened in the past, why not use that to teach people what those objectionable or bad things are? If we removed everything that was associated or affiliated with something negative, the lesson would be lost. We would really have nothing to build upon, and we would be doomed to repeat those mistakes in the past. I say leave the statues up.
There's a quote from 100 years ago from G.K. Chesterton, British guy, and said, if you bought a property, a sprawling estate, and one day you're going across your property, you find that there's a wall that you didn't know. There's a wall running right across your property, and you're like, well, I'm going to tear this down. I didn't envision this when I bought this. And he said, what you should do is first find out why was that wall put there. And then, if you want to, it's your property, go ahead and tear it down. But you got to do your homework and understand why is it there to begin with before you go through the process of removing that thing. And the Bible talks about monuments that your forefathers put up, to leave them there because this is bigger than you, bigger than your time. This is for all time, as a reminder for either good or ill, as you said, to learn from. It seems like a quite ingrained concept from ancient times even to 100 years ago, and it seems at present. These are learning opportunities.
There are learning opportunities. If you study your history and put everything in its proper context, what the people of that day once thought of the person immortalized in form, that can change over time. The one thing that remains is the lesson and the evidence. Some of the perceptions or thoughts that we have about these monuments can change. They still serve as a reminder. If we do not remind ourselves of the mistakes of the past, we are going to be doomed to repeat them. Leave them up and let's talk about it. Let's explain what was the mindset when it went up, and let's compare and contrast that with what we think about it today.
Yes, sir. Moving back onto guns, because there are so many things I love to talk to you about. You are a nationally recognized man in the arena of guns. You're an expert witness on the subject of guns. You got to know a thing or two to be at that level.
True.
What is a good analog for proper gun ownership that might be missing in today's society? This morning, might be silly, I was watching Andy Griffith's show, and there was an episode, if you remember that show, folks at home watching, this couple wanted to get married, and this hick guy in the woods, he wanted to steal the bride. Andy had the deputy
Barney Fife?
Barney Fife, yes, sorry.
Man, my trivia is on point this morning.
Andy had Barney dress as the bride and then get kidnapped. It's a whole thing. But in the episode, though, the bad guy fires off his gun during the wedding ceremony, and here's the two cops of the town not freaking out over it. It kind of made me think, I'm like, that was a different time. Guns maybe weren't like, oh, we're all gonna die. What are we missing that maybe doesn't directly relate to guns in society, like an instinct, a concept? What did we lose that made us fear guns to the extent that we do more so than we did in eras of the past?
I think in many contexts, a lot of people have removed guns from the home. Not from the home physically, but from the homes conceptually and from an educational standpoint. If it were not for guns, a lot of things could not have happened. The modern civil rights movement could not have happened. That was all predicated on people having access to guns. And during those prior generations, it was not uncommon for guns to be left openly out on a kitchen table or a bookshelf. Everyone knew it was there, but everyone told the kids constantly, this is a gun for personal protection. It's potentially dangerous. If you're a child, don't touch it, don't bother it. When you bring children or other people into the fold and you talk to them about what guns are, what they're used for, and what can happen when you misuse them, there is this sense of their importance and their reverence. It's missing today because everyone wants guns to be hidden, to be taboo, to bring forth the mindset that a child should not have any exposure to guns at all. And I think that's a grave injustice to the child, because that child may not be in your company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months out of a year. He may come into contact with a gun. What would you want your kid to do? Hopefully, if you've taught them about guns, those lessons will carry forward. They will leave and remove themselves from the area. They'll tell a responsible adult, and they'll be safe. And that other child who didn't have the benefit of the investment you made in your child, they will eventually be apprehended or appropriately disciplined, and that gun would be secured and everyone would be safer.
Education.
It is, man.
Mr. Ector here is an educator on the topic of guns, how to use them, gun safety. It's almost like Bubba from Forrest Gump. There are a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways to cook shrimp, or there are a lot of angles to look at guns. This is a good question. Broaden people's horizons who may just kind of have a one-track mind about guns.
I can relate to that because in the aftermath of the armed robbery in which I was victimized.
Maybe you want to tell that story to the folks at home.
Just quickly, I was coming home from work. It was at a time of the year when it gets dark fairly early, 4:30 or so. I was robbed at gunpoint by two young men at my residence. I was not a gun owner, wasn't really big into guns. In the aftermath, I had a change of heart and I went on to become a gun owner. And then I went on to become a firearms instructor and train thousands of people in the aftermath. The thing that I wanted to drive home is that gun ownership, that's the first part. Personal protection, that's the other part. Where do you go from there? Advocacy, where you want to preserve this right and this freedom for future generations. So you engage in educational activities, you participate in interviews, you go and you talk to the media, you do public demonstrations. Big, huge event I'm doing on the second weekend of August, the weekend of the 15th and the 16th. I'm going to train at least 1,000 women how to shoot a gun in one day. Who knows, it might even be 2,000. I'm going to do it at 2 locations, back-to-back days, man, on the 15th and 16th at 2 Metro Detroit gun ranges. But you know what? It's all about empowering people and education. And many people who participate, they may not even buy a gun. They may not even carry a gun. They may not get a concealed carry pistol license. But one thing that we've done, we've increased the amount of knowledge in the community about guns, that they're not dangerous, only dangerous, ignorant people with guns. We're going to teach people how to safeguard those guns from their children or other vulnerable adults. And we're going to teach people how to take on a more active role in their personal protection. It's going to be great.
I'm excited because I know some ladies. I'm gonna pass on.
Bring them, man. Bring them.
You have such layers to what you're saying. I can tell there's a lot to unpack. You're kind of doing a flyover for a lot of this stuff. Check out Detroit CCW, Instagram, YouTube, and start your path toward education on gun ownership and just the proper way of looking at firearms. How have recent advances in technology made us safer in the area of gun ownership? Has any technological advancement come along recently that has changed things, or is it the same as it's always been?
There are always new innovations with regards to guns. The basic design of the typical firearm has not changed in many generations. It basically functions the same. What has not changed is how to handle them, how to safely operate them. Whether you can put various different features on a gun, whether you can put safeties or locks on a gun, it's all superfluous. The guns I carry have no safeties, have no internal locks. I have been trained in how to handle it safely. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. You realize that in an economy, in a market, they're still producing these guns, and manufacturers have to come up with different reasons why you buy this gun as opposed to buying that gun, and they may espouse this feature or that feature or the other. In my book, they're all the same.
You know, that's interesting.
They're all the same.
It's kind of like that joke, Tide detergent was one of the original laundry detergents. It came out like, what, 60 years ago. Ever since it came out, they've always been improving. You know, the formula's always been improving. You would think by now they would have cured cancer in a laundry detergent. It seems like guns are the same way. They're improved, but there's maybe always trade-offs. No great leaps in the
well, you
last
know what?
while.
We probably will move to the next generation of personal protection tools, man. I'm still waiting for those phasers from Star Trek to come out, man.
Well, the military has lasers now, so maybe, I don't know if they'll only be able to set the stun. I think it's kill or no kill.
I'll keep it on stun, and if warfare breaks out, we'll adjust the dial.
Yes, sir. What does healthy gun ownership look like?
It looks like individuals who are appropriately trained, who are using their guns lawfully, are using their guns in support of their other rights. It's about educating the public, educating your family, educating your children. Also, it's a means of public display. Anytime I go to a political rally or function, like every year here in the state of Michigan, we go to the Lansing Capitol. A lot of individuals who are Second Amendment advocates, we proudly wear and display our firearms, not as a form of intimidation, but as an exercise of our First Amendment right, which, by the way, points to the Second Amendment, which is the tool that we will use if our government ever stops listening to us exercise our First Amendment. It is a symbol of freedom. It is a tool that has literally given birth to this nation. It is a tool that can safeguard and protect our freedoms. I'm a gun owner. I'm proud to say that, and I'm working to ensure that this whole principle, the concept of gun ownership persists in the future.